Welcome to Boxing Predictions. In this video, I will be giving you my David Price, David Allen preview, as well as my David Price, David Allen prediction. Before we get started, please jump down to the comment section below and type the name of who you think will be victorious on the night. Either type David Price or type David Allen, and at the end of the video, let me know whether you agree with my prediction. And don't forget, if you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Then I can send you a notification every single time a new video hits the channel. At the moment, there are quite a lot of amazing heavyweight fights that are being showcased on this channel. So why not check those videos out and see whether you agree with those predictions as well. As well as my heavyweight rankings video, which went up some weeks ago. See whether you agree with my top 10. So this fight takes place on the 20th of July 2019. It's the O2 Arena on the undercard of the Spilka and Whyte and Oscar Rivas headliner. No titles are up for grabs. I'm not entirely sure how many rounds this is. It's either going to be a 10 or a 12, I presume, but that hasn't been announced. But it's definitely a bit of an interesting one. I mean, these are not top heavyweights. They're not contenders, but they're two interesting personalities on the British scene. So it's well worth checking, well worth talking about it. Because I think there'll be a lot of people either way, you know, in favour of both fighters. So let's talk about the two guys and then talk about how we see this fight going. So on one side, we've got David Price. He's got a record of 24-6 with 19 wins by stoppage. All of his defeats have been by stoppage, although one of them he was pulled out in by his corner. Now he's a big boy, 6'8" and 250 pounds there or thereabouts. He's a former British and Commonwealth champion. He got a series of brutal knockout wins over a range of journeymen and, you know, British level guys. He's lost all of his big fights. Tony Thompson stopped him twice about 5 or 6 years ago. Then Erkin Tepa stopped him, but Erkin Tepa was then banned for PEDs, but bizarrely the result was not overturned. I thought that was a bit of a shame. It should have been, in my opinion. He then lost to Christian Hammer, you know, someone who he was expected to deal with fairly easily. He was then rendered completely unconscious by Povetkin, where he actually rocked Povetkin before getting basically put to sleep himself. And then, as I said, he recently got pulled by his corner due to an injury versus Kuzmin in a fight that I believe that he took on slow notice basically for the money. And his recent form includes a stoppage win against Tom Little, which was expected. And then a more tougher outing against Cash Ali, who was disqualified for biting. What an absolute disgrace. Now, I've always had mixed thoughts about David Price. For some reason, I've always wanted him to win. It's a similar sort of thing like Wladimir Harrison, another guy who I just wanted to win. I wanted to see him win. I think it was because deep down I knew that he couldn't. You know, there's always something there about David Price. It just doesn't come together for one reason or other. You know, he's got all of the physical attributes. He's a genuine super heavyweight. He's got dynamite knockout power. You know, I've always said that he's got the tools. You know, if everything fell his way, he could become a world champion, or he could have become a world champion. He should have been able to keep people at range and then land those combinations and real hurtful knockout punches. It just hasn't quite worked for him. And in recent years, you know, even those combination big power punches seem to have deserted him. You know, I've always thought that bizarrely, despite the fact that, you know, he is 6'8", 250 pounds. It's always looked, a bit drawn out, a bit thin. And I thought that he could have a few more pounds on him, and maybe that would help him with his chin, for example. But then he did put a bit of timber on his frame, went up to about 270, 280 even maybe, and really there was no change. If anything, he looked worse. So not a good change. But that's what we've got to say about David Price. Now on the other side, we've got David Allen. Now, David Allen's got a record of 17 victories, 4 defeats, 2 draws, 14 of his wins are by stoppage. He's 6'4", so he's shorter, and he's around, he's about around the 240, 250, 260, flickers around that weight. He's fought for the Commonwealth title twice, both times unsuccessful, but he was unlucky in both of those matchups. He's been in there with some decent opposition, to be fair to him. He had Dillian Whyte, who completely outboxed him over 10 rounds. Luis Ortiz completely outboxed him, then stopped him. Then he had 2 fights against Leonard Torres, who's a decent operator, The first fight was fairly close, but a loss. And then the second, he was winning and it was stopped on a cut, but I believe it ended up being a draw, but he was having the best of it in my opinion. Then he fought rising star Tony Yoka, who stopped him in the final round after a complete barrage of an entire round of punches with nothing coming back. I think he was upset about that, but if you're receiving 50 or 60 punches in the space of about 120 seconds and you don't really return anything, you can't really have much to say about that. But he had a massive win over former world champion Lucas Browne, which basically saved his career with a really hurtful body shot. So he's in it from one punch alone, really. I mean, really, he's one of these guys that he's kind of like a budget version of Chisora. He's kind of been in the ring with better people, better opposition than him. He's kind of always lost his big fights. Some fights he hasn't put in the effort. Some he has. Some fights he's been unlucky. And he's doing that all with a much reduced skill set. So really the story of this fight for me is what does David Price have left? And is David Allen actually good enough to put it on David Price? We're talking about a man who's been stopped 6 times, 5 of which were pretty devastating knockouts. Someone who showed 0 progression in the pro ranks. He's learned nothing. He doesn't fight to his strength, but he does have lights out knockout power like few others do. And he's in the ring with a guy who should be hungry, who should be desperate to prove the doubters wrong. But someone who lacks a well-rounded skill set, has 0 finesse, and ultimately is very, very limited. Now, you'd think that this fight would be all about Allen taking Price rounds, tiring him out, getting close to him, getting on his chest, forcing those body shots, infighting, and trying to force the stoppage. I think that's what most people will say is going to happen. I believe most people will fancy Allen. They'll say that David Price is over, and David Price is just going to outwork him. I just can't see it, but I think people will say that will outwork him and tire him out and basically force a stoppage. But for one last time, I'm sticking with David Price, and I'm going all out. I'm going all out with my prediction, and I'm saying this is first round knockout. This is first round icing for David Price. So let me know what you think about the prediction. I'd be really interested to know whether you think that I might be on the right track, and whether you think it's worth putting anything on a first round knockout for David Price. Because if he gets this, beating David Allen means almost nothing, but it might get him, for instance, a fight against someone like Joyce, Daniel Dubois, Nathan Gorman, one of these guys, before, and then, you know, whatever, you know. But anyway, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. And if you like the video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Then I can send you the notification every single time a new video comes up with all these predictions. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'll see you soon.